Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for The Unruly Hare, released in 1945. It's the 450th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 1 Blu-ray set, and I have a link below to that set. The cartoon is under copyright. You will not find it on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it on their own channel. But in case you haven't seen this one, you have a railroad company building a railroad, and we see the railroad surveyor, who happens to be Elmer Fudd, disturbing Bugs Bunny by singing like Frank Sinatra, or a facsimile as Bugs says. And so Bugs just messes with Elmer for the rest of the short. Nothing too deep story-wise, but that's okay. This one is just full of gags that doesn't even matter. So this one has a lot of guests in it. First up, you're going to see the highlights of the audio commentary I did with my good friend Austin Kelly, who is a Tashlin expert. And then you'll hear from my good friend Luke Perkins, who is a regular guest on the channel and a budding historian himself. And then after that, I'll go through some of the references within. And among all that is my good friend Manny, Cruz, the junior tenor, who'll go through the musical references, because there's definitely some interesting musical references. One of which I already mentioned, Frank Sinatra. If you want to skip ahead to anything, I'll have timestamps in the description, but for now, let's start off with the commentary highlights. So, with me today is my good friend and Tashlin expert, Austin Kelly. Say hi.
Hi, I'm very glad to be here for what I think is another one of Tashlin's greatest Warner cartoons, scripted in November of 1943 and released in February of 1945, 15 months later.
This is actually the last cartoon Frank Tashlin is even credited in.
I do want to talk about that while we're here. A lot of people always ask me, they're like, well, I know you're a fan of Warner Brothers and I know you're a fan of Frank Tashlin. Why did he only do 2 Bugs Bunny cartoons? Well, when he started out as a director at Warner's, you had to either make cartoons with Porky or Daffy, or you had to create your own characters and do one-shots. And once you built up seniority, you could do Bugs cartoons, who was obviously considered like the star character and the gold standard at the studio. And when Tashlin built up the seniority to do Bugs cartoons, obviously he left the studio to do his own feature films in late 1944. So, you know, he had the opportunity, but he just left when he got it, and obviously he was a director there before, but since he left the studio, he lost all the seniority from his previous stay, so there you go. You can kind of tell he was getting tired with Porky at this point, and you can feel the energy in this cartoon. He's so eager to get on with it. In fact, this and Hair Remover were scripted 1 month within each other, so I have a theory that he did those right away because he was very eager to stop working with Porky. And Hair Remover was actually released a lot later and held back, so that kind of makes sense as to why that was scripted so early. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I wish he did more Bugs cartoons because he's hitting it right out of the park right away here.
You mentioned to me that there's some weird animation in this one.
People cite Hiawatha's Hare Hunt, which is a Freeland cartoon from a few years earlier, as having the most off-model and wildly different from each other Bugs drawings by all these weird different animators. But this cartoon has to give that one a run for its money in that category. I mean, the opening scene with Bugs in the tree stump is by Cal Dalton, and he makes him look like some sort of a groundhog in that scene or rodent. And Artie Davis's stuff, which is like when he's tiptoeing his fingers across the gun and he flicks it up against Elmer's face, he gives him so much detail and wrinkles that he almost looks like an old man, and it's almost Scribner-like grotesque at times. So it's so weird. And those 2 are the only ones I can spot. Those are the only 2 animators I can spot in this one, because everyone else is drawing in such weird, similarly weird styles. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love this cartoon, and I love Tashlin, I love Art Davis, and I love Cal Dalton, but I just don't know why here, out of all times, they're all just drawing in such a weird way.
I also want to point out, like, the way that Elmer is drawn in this particular short, which is similar to the previous one that we did, where Elmer didn't even talk, the stupid Cupid. But I just like his design in this one for some reason. It's just the same yet different, if that makes sense. Like, it's Elmer.
Yeah. I mean, I get where you're coming from. It might have been Tashlin's own influence. I don't know if Tashlin was doing his own character models at the time, but Tashlin was definitely doing his own layouts to like a Chuck Jones or Bob McKimson level, where he would do, all different kinds of roughs for just a tiny scene, and he would do hundreds of drawings per cartoon. So that might be his influence seeping into the Elmer design here, and might even be a bit of the Scott art technique. It's Tashlin. It's great, and I do have to admit, in comparison, this is only in comparison to his other stuff, you might not like this one as much as Stupid Cupid or Porky Pig's Feet, but either way, they are all top-notch, home run, phenomenal cartoons if you looked at them from an objective point of view, and I think they're all great in their own right.
Now we're just going to hear a little bit from Luke Perkins, who basically said that this is one of his favorite cartoons ever, so take it away, Luke.
Hello. I'm glad to be here, and especially for the first of Frank Tashlin's Bugs Bunny duology. This was one of only 2 Bugs Bunny cartoons that Frank Tashlin directed. This other cartoon that Frank Tashlin did, which was Hair Remover, which was his final, was unfinished by Frank Tashlin, then taken by the Robert McKimson unit, so they had to finish it. After Frank Tashlin left Warner Brothers, he went to John Sutherland's studio to make a few stop-motion short films. He even became a gag writer for Lucille Ball, Harper Marx, Bob Hope, and a few others. What a resume. And for this being Frank Tashlin's first Bugs Bunny cartoon, it's so fantastic. You can genuinely tell that Frank is just so giddy and so excited to finally be working with Bugs Bunny after having to be constantly working with Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, which he hated doing those Porky Pig shorts, despite Swooner Crooner, which is a fantastic cartoon, being nominated for an Academy Award due to his amazement. He absolutely nails Bugs' wit, while he also resolves to some classic Tashlinisms, including, like in the beginning of this cartoon right here, Bugs uses a pinup magazine to get to Elmer's soft spot. You can't be Tashlin without those babies. In a way, with this cartoon especially, you can tell that Tashlin was definitely the most playful of all the directors in terms of experimentation and layout shots, but he was also the most adult in my opinion. Like with all these like pinup gags like before, the way he uses really adult innuendos and rather very naughty gags, he does it with a bit more sophistication and class, especially compared to Clampett, which is a bit more boyish, and Clampett's sexualization gags are a bit more phallic, while with Tashlin, it's even more adultish. I also definitely know that Thad and Austin would definitely give me sort of the stink eye if I didn't have to mention Frank Tashlin's leg fetish. Like, wow. In addition to being the most playful and the most adultish of all directors, his animation was sort of more limited or stylized animation. I don't like calling it limited animation because it sounds so degrading. Even with this shot here where Bugs is going, Geronimo, that shot, the only thing animated in that one shot is the mouth. And yet, it works very well. He uses that kind of animation spectacularly. It just works.
So those were the commentary highlights and, of course, thoughts from my good friend Luke Perkins. So in the rest of the track, it'll be me and my good friend Manny Cruz as we go through the short from start to finish, and Manny will go through the musical trivia alongside anything else he wants to mention. But let's bring Manny into this. So here is Manny.
Hi, everyone. This is Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, coming at you with the latest edition of It's Time for Manny's Music Time with music trivia for you today. Bum! For the 1945 Merry Melody cartoon, The Unruly Hare, directed by my fellow Jersey boy, Frank Tashlin. So Anthony was telling me a few days ago that he was recording the commentary for this short. Not only do I love the cartoons of Frank Tashlin, but this one is actually one of my personal favorite Tashlin shorts. And this was one I saw growing up as a kid. As I said before, I was a kid in the 90s. I'm a little younger than Anthony. And this short was shown relatively often on the Turner networks. I probably saw this one on TNT or TBS back then. And I've always thought this cartoon was crazy. Not crazy. Well, it is crazy. It's just a Tashlin short. But it's hilarious, and certain scenes always stuck out of my brain. And then when I purchased the recent Blu-ray of the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice that this is featured on, I was rewatching it, and the restoration is gorgeous. And doing a rewatch of this cartoon, preparing for this commentary, I forgot how funny this cartoon is. And it really is a shame that Frank Tashlin only had the chance to direct 2 Bugs Bunny shorts, both of which I really like. And this probably is my, I don't know, now I got to rewatch Hair Remover and see which one I like more. But this was so fun to see again. I'm so happy to talk about it.
But before we go through the short from start to finish and go through a lot of the references, I just wanted to point out that, yes, as already mentioned, Tashlin only did the 2 shorts, and this is the only one that he's credited on. In fact, this is the last short he's credited on, period. He makes 4 more shorts: Behind the Meatball, Tale of 2 Mice, Nasty Quacks, and Hair Remover, and he's not credited on those. And that was a Warner Brothers policy, and they did a similar thing for Tex Avery in the last few shorts that he directed. But by that point, he was fired, and Clamp had finished off those shorts anyway. And Hair Remover, I believe, was also finished by McKimson. That one's definitely spotty in terms of quality, and I actually have the review of that one on the channel if you want to check that out.
So let's jump right into the musical cues. So there are a few, and I'm not going to try to overwhelm you guys with too much music now, because usually I like to focus Manny's music time on the merry melodies of the 30s, but again, I love this short. I had to talk about it. So the musical direction obviously is Carl Stalling, and the musical orchestration uncredited by the great Milt Franklin. So the cartoon obviously starts off with Merrily We Roll Along, the Merry Melodies theme song, the rendition of, or the arrangement, I should say, of the theme song that Carl Stalling did starting in 1941. And it's the one you hear in almost all the Blue Ribbon Merry Melody intros. It's that particular arrangement. The arrangement's going to change soon once we get into 1945 and beyond. The opening titles has the song What's Up Doc by Carl Stalling himself. It's good to hear this song being used early on. When I hear this song, I always think of like a Chuck Jones short from the 50s, but this is one of the first cartoons that features Bugs' theme song in the cartoon itself in the opening titles. So, like I said, you hear it in the credits. It's not listed on the cue sheet because the cue sheets that I have from Daniel Goldmark don't list the Stalling originals, and hopefully one day I could get that information. And you also hear this cue later on in the cartoon during the scene where Bug says, "What's up, Doc?" obviously, and he's looking inside the hole with Elmer. Man, I really enjoyed this scene. There's a bunch of scenes in this cartoon I really like. So we'll put a pin in that. We'll come back to that one.
So opening up right away, we see this beautiful cinematic shot here. And yes, it's a Frank Tashlin review, and I'm going to be using the word cinematic a lot. Although this short is less cinematic than some of his others, and that's not a bad thing. This opening shot definitely is, and you got these wonderful shots where it's similar to what he did in Brother Brat, where you would have in the beginning all the silhouettes of people, and I guess that's one way to save on costs, if we're being honest, but it works effectively here, and it even sets up the gag where they're singing "I've Been Working on the Railroad," but then later on we see Elmer where he's singing like Frank Sinatra, or his facsimile anyway, as Bugs Bunny mentions. And there's even one split shot where they're laying down the wood for the tracks, and that only goes for a couple of seconds, and it's this elaborate shot, and yet you technically don't even need that. That would have been extra work for Tashlin, but no, he does it anyway, and it actually looks really good. It just adds to it all, and as they're laying down those pieces of wood, it actually bounces in time to the music too.
So, as the cartoon starts proper, you hear the song, "I've Been Working on the Railroad."
I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad to pass the time away.
So that's an American folk song. We don't know exactly who wrote the melody for it, but it was first published in 1894 as Levy's song. And you hear the song in the beginning, we hear the railroad workers. I felt like saying "back to the railroad," like Elmer says, but the railroad workers are working.
Don't you hear the whistle blowing? Rise up so early in the morn. Don't you hear the captain shouting? Time to blow your horn.
And you also hear it beautifully sung by Arthur Q. Bryan as Elmer.
I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad.
I've been working on the railroad. Let me do that again. I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. Wow, I went to college for music and I sound like that. I sound like Frankie Sinatra. or an unreasonable facsimile.
Hey, that sounds like Frankie Sinatra. Or an unreasonable facsimile.
I did not know the word facsimile until I saw this cartoon as a kid. So thanks for teaching me that. And also, one thing that I'll mention again later on in the commentary, the faces and the poses that Bugs and Elmer do in this cartoon, chef's kiss. Mwah. Frank Tashlin, I love the poses that you chose in this cartoon because they kill me. And, you know, when Bugs, like, he does, like, the PU sign and he goes back into his hole, I love it.
And speaking of music, we hear Bugs Bunny singing, and that's something that Friz Freleng would do a lot in later shorts, especially in the early 50s. But we see those signs saying railroad right of way. It's interesting to note that in about 5 or so years after this, there will be a slow decline of railways in America as highways would take over freeways. It would become the age of the car, and sadly, a lot of my American friends are saying that they really wish that they had a grand railroad again like they do in Japan and other places. But at the time, rail was still king. Cars weren't exactly that affordable just yet, although once the soldiers returned back from the war and there started to be this booming middle class, cars became more affordable, car ownership was picked up, the amount of people using trains ended up declining. But I like this shot of Bugs Bunny just eating his carrots. And how many carrots is he eating? And I've just realized that a lot of those carrots don't look very eaten. Is that just his stash that he's going to pick up and eat later on? He's a bit of a glutton, isn't he? So Bugs is reading hair-raising stories, obviously a pun for hair-raising stories, must be some sort of a horror book or maybe a comic, I don't know. And he's singing a song here, and Manny will go through that song. But we hear Elmer singing, working on the railroad as well. But Bugs' reaction to Elmer singing, "Oh, it must be Frank Sinatra," just kills me. In fact, a lot of the animation in this one is so wild, and as I mentioned in the track with Austin Kelly a while back, the animation in this one is just so bizarre. In fact, this contains some of the weirdest frames of Elmer Fudd, and even Bugs Bunny too, you'll ever see. It's so off-model, and yet it works so well. But Bugs gives that brief look of disgust by holding his nose as he goes down the hole, and I guess it doesn't take much to provoke Bugs like this. At least in the Chuck Jones shorts, there will be that little bit more to provoke Bugs into going, of course you realize this means war. Here, it's just, oh, he's a bad singer, I'm just gonna mess with him. I guess it's kind of similar to what Clampett was doing, except Tashlin does his own thing, as we're about to see.
So, as you see Bugs properly featured for the first time in a cartoon, I know I jumped around a little bit, but you hear Bugs singing as time goes by with words and lyrics by Herman Hupfeld.
Like love songs, never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy, and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate. Ain't it the truth? Man must have his mate that no one can deny.
So it was originally written for the Broadway musical Everyone's Welcome from 1931, but it gained its fame and its immortality by being featured in the 1942 film Casablanca, where the actor Dooley Wilson plays Sam, and he sings this song, plays it on the piano in the film. And ever since the late 90s, the Warner Brothers logo uses As Time Goes By as its theme song, kind of like what Disney does with When You Wish Upon a Star from Pinocchio. I love the rendition that Bugs does in this one. Mel Blanc, again, him and Arthur Q. Bryan are phenomenal singers, but when Bugs is singing, when woman needs that man and man must have his mate, or something like that, and you look at Bugs and he says, ain't it the truth? And he does that little wiggle with his eyes and that face. It's just, oh, Tashlin, you are on fire in this cartoon. Just that face that Bugs makes and you hear that little wiggling going on. Love it. Love it.
And once again, Tashlin's all about those little touches, like adding a very quick shot of Bugs lifting up a sign saying PU. It only lasts for like a second, and Tashlin didn't have to do it, but he does, and we're all thankful for it. So Elmer uses what I believe is called a surveyor's telescope. If I got that terminology wrong, let me know in the comments. If you're a surveyor, please don't get angry. I'm not a surveyor. I don't know what some of the equipment is called. Feel free to correct me. But anyway, he looks through the telescope, and Bugs uses a copy of Esquire, so that's a parody of the men's magazine Esquire. So think Playboy, but without the nudity. So it'd be like sort of sophisticated articles for men, but it also feature pinups inside. And what do you think? Bugs shows him pinups in one of the best renditions of It Had to Be You, and I'm sure Manny will concur with that.
It Had to Be You, music by Isham Jones, and the words were by Gus Kahn. Because again, this is Frank Tashlin. You gotta have, beautiful looking women, either in the cartoon or in the films that he would later direct after leaving the cartoon industry. I really like this rendition of it. I like the arrangement that Carl Stalling did for this one. A little more up tempo. Bum ba da 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 dun da 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 da. It Had to Be You is one of my favorite songs that have been used in Warner Brothers cartoons. It's used in lots of different shorts. When you see like a beautiful woman or a character falls in love with another character, you hear it a lot.
And that's all built up to that wonderful gag of Bugs with lipstick. I mean, Bugs in drag, always a classic, but this is one of the best times he's done it. Hands down, no questions. So Elmer just can't stand it anymore. He just has to kiss the woman, which ends up being Bugs once he realizes he ain't happy.
Now, what's interesting is after Bugs puts on the lipstick and tricks Elmer, he quotes the title of another song. He says, "Is you is or is you ain't my baby."
Is you is or is you ain't my baby?
Which is a song that was written by Louis Jordan and Billy Austin from the year 1943. But of course, animation nerds will know that song as the song that Tom sings in the 1946 MGM Tom and Jerry cartoon, Solid Serenade. And of course, I record this. It's actually February 12th now. I'm recording this at midnight. But yesterday, I received the DVD of the Tom and Jerry CinemaScope collection. So animation nerds, go get that set. Even though sadly Solid Serenade is not on that one, but still some awesome cartoons, beautiful restoration.
I got a gal always late. Anytime we have a date, but I love her. I'm gonna ask her, is you is or is you ain't my baby?
And I like the shot here of Bugs running away, and when he sees the hole, he just stops in midair and just completely switches around and dives right in. Again, Tashlin seems to like just adding these little flourishes, which you didn't have to do. I'm so glad he's done it. And Elmer shoots at the hole, which, if you know your physics, the outcome would be a lot nastier than depicted here, but anyway, I think it makes it even funnier.
It really makes me laugh after Elmer starts shooting and he goes, "I hate little gray wabbits," and then he does his laugh, but he's so pissed off, and it just makes me laugh how he has like such a normal Elmer response, but he's like annoyed, and I love it.
I hate little gray wabbits.
But there's one strange moment, and I wonder if there was meant to be something here, like a sound effect or whatever, but Bugs briefly pops out from the tree trunk, opens his mouth, but there's no sound, and then pops back in. So I wonder if there was meant to be a funny sound effect. So if you know any further details about that, definitely let me know, but it feels like there was supposed to be something else there. Buddy approaches the telescope again, and Tashlin continues on with that gag, doing quite possibly the most illogical gag in Looney Tunes history. So Bugs, just puts a little flame and it looks like it's a forest fire all of a sudden. Love it. And I know I'm gushing a lot about the little details here, but you got Elmer yelling out, "Fire, fire!" But Bugs does a thing, again, you didn't need this, but it's so damn funny. Bugs just extends his ladder as a fireman all of a sudden, goes up, and then slides down this fire pole that just happens to be there. Any other director would have probably not even bothered with any of that, but it works so well. And when Elmo's running up yelling out, "Water, water," look how many gags Tashlin packs into it. So, as you'd expect, Bugs sprays him with water. He turns into one of those inflatable bouncy things. I'm not sure what the name is. If you can let me know of that, if you know what it's actually called. And he continues spraying him. Oh, by the way, if you look at Bugs' hat, it just says half on it. Again, another great touch. But the camera just pans over to the left, and Elmer's right there. That's just insane. Who thinks of that? And in a perfect bit of timing, Tashlin slows things down a little bit, where we got this held pose. Bugs just uses his fingers, timed beautifully to the music, by the way. Elmer glances down, and then bang.
Bugs imitating the sound of the fire truck during that scene.
Fireman, conflagration! Help! Water, water, fireman! Help! Help! Conflagration! Water! Water! Help!
And just the way he reacts when he starts squirting Elmer with the seltzer water, and Elmer turns into like a buoy or something like that, or like an inflatable thing. That whole scene's hilarious. And also, when Elmer realizes he's been tricked and he points his rifle at Bugs, and Bugs is looking at Elmer and he starts walking his fingers on the rifle, the faces they make, again, Tashlin, thank you for making this cartoon so funny with the poses that you chose for their faces. And also, I gotta shout out Treg Brown because his sound editing in this cartoon kills me.
What a dope! Imagine asking for it.
Because right there, when Bugs is walking his finger up the rifle and he smacks Elmer's nose, and you hear that whoop sound, I guess Anthony used a clip of it. You hear that particular sound effect in other Warner Brothers cartoons, and it always makes me laugh. But it's just, oh, thank you, Treg Brown, for using that noise.
We speed things up once again. Tashlin's clearly having fun here, and it's such a shame. This is the only one that he did fully, and one that he clearly put his all in, and it's such a shame that he just didn't make another one. And again, the pace is really picked up here. You've got the bent gun shooting the 2 targets that Bugs happens to have, and all those cigars that Bugs happens to have as well. By my calculation, we're looking at 1 gag every couple of seconds on average in that 1 minute alone. It's incredible.
You win, Doc.
And funnily enough, I actually just did a review for The Egg Collector, which is an early Chuck Jones short. And yes, comparing the 2 shorts is apples and oranges, but it's amazing the difference between going from one short that is incredibly slow with barely anything happens to this. It's just shows how varied the Looney Tunes universe can really be. And a few more touches you may not have noticed. Look how long it takes for the smoke to go from Elmer's face, and he still has those cigars, and most of the time in these shorts, you wouldn't have the cigars there at all. It would just disappear in the next shot.
So, jumping ahead, we do a little music from the 19th century. Perpetual Motion by Johann Strauss II. Johann Strauss, the Waltz King, the composer of Tales from the Vienna Woods, The Blue Danube, and all those other famous staples of the classical music repertoire. If you want to know more about Johann Strauss II, check out the cartoon that features 2 of his pieces. Check out the commentary for Corny Concerto to learn more about Strauss, one of the most famous composers of the Romantic period of music. That's the song that you hear during the cigar scene where Bugs gives Elmer exploding cigars and blows up in his face, and the chase begins. I can't sing it that well.
You win, Doc.
But you've heard it in other Warner Brothers shorts whenever a character's running around and doing something silly. I like it. It's a very bouncy piece in this arrangement. Milt Franklin and Carl Stalling decided to have a xylophone play the melody, which I really like in this scene.
And when Elmer comically shoots down that tree trunk, again, if he tried to do that in real life, we'd have a different outcome there. But anyway, look at the gun. It turns red. So it's just those little touches. And I know I've said that a few times already, but it really is incredible. And to think we are only halfway through the short and so much has happened in this one. You've got other shorts that, again, and Egg Collector is probably a good example where not much happens at all and things feel like they take forever. And here, you've got more than enough in that one short, heck, in the last minute, that other directors would probably use in one short, and yet Tashlin does that in just half a short. But halfway through, you got Bugs, I guess. This is a good bit for Tashlin to add, even though it's not really necessary. You've got Bugs adjusting himself like he's wearing clothes. But this is a good way for audiences to catch their breath, because so much really did happen just then. And audiences can now just stop laughing for a bit, let them breathe, and then we go to the next bit where we see Elmer trying to find where Bugs is.
You hear a brief snippet of a song called Every Little Movement by Karl Haschner, I think that's how you pronounce it, and Otto Harbach. That song comes from a 1910 musical called Madame Sherry. That's a song you hear when Bugs comes out of his hole and he starts stretching his body out. Now, I don't want to jump too much information because I don't want to make this super long, but I did look up a little bit about Otto Harbach, and he was the lyricist. So Karl Hoschna, he was a Tin Pan Alley composer. He wrote the music, and Harbach wrote the lyrics. But Harbach did collaborate with a lot of famous songwriters of that time. I think like Jerome Kern, George Gershwin, things of that nature. So he was a pretty big deal.
Elmer shoots again, and Bugs approaches, and we do that whole trope of Elmer being incredibly stupid and not knowing he's actually talking to the rabbit that he's trying to get. And I'm sure Manny will agree here. The rendition of What's Up Duck in this scene as the discussion takes place, you don't hear that too often. Usually you only hear What's Up Duck on the opening credits, but here it's actually part of the score, which I thought was a nice little touch. But I love Bugs's line here. It's murder, he says.
What's up, Doc?
I just put a crazy wabbit out of his misery.
It's murder, he says. How gruesome.
I can't seem to find that being a reference to anything, so if you know where that would have come from, like a radio show or a movie, definitely let me know in the comments.
Speaking of another sound effect, the whole scene where Elmer and Bugs are looking in the hole and Bugs goes, "Don't look now, Doc, but you missed me." Elmer's face when he gets so angry and then Bugs honks his nose and you hear that car horn sound effect. Oh, another scene that kills me. Love it.
Don't look now, Doc, but you missed me.
Bugs points out that Elmer missed him. Elmer gets really upset, and again, we get a very elaborate shot of Bugs just entering a hole. Once again, other directors would be probably more straightforward with that, but not Tashlin. He's done it again.
Geronimo!
So Bugs stays down the hole, he's eating away. I guess he needs to have a bit of a snack in between all of this, but he already has a head on a stick. It just happens to be lying around, saying, "Hey, I wonder if he's up there." And sure enough, Elmer definitely is. A great shot to freeze frame is when Bugs is shaking all about after Elmer hits him. I guess he's run out of bullets. By the way, with the amount of shots that Elmer shot throughout this short, how many bullets has he gone through? Then again, if you look at later shorts, especially ones done by Friz Freleng, he seems to be a real gun nut anyway, so he's probably got hundreds of bullets just lying around. But I like the timing, where he's like, "Yeah, I got the rabbit. Oh, back to the railroad." Just so quick, just bang, just switches, just changes tune right away. It's like, okay, I've got the rabbit now, back to work. So I guess he's a very loyal worker.
Got that wabbit. I got him. Way. Whoop. Well, back to the railroad.
He approaches Bugs, who decides to take the place of the telescope, and there's been plenty of opportunities for Bugs to just walk away by this point, especially now, but no, he just wants to continue messing with Elmer. But look closely at the shot where Elmer is adjusting this telescope that Bugs Bunny is taking the place of. Look at the legs, and you can see that everything is on just one cell except for the legs, but they didn't quite get the legs cut out exactly where the tail is, so it creates an interesting little effect there where it didn't quite work out as well as it should. But honestly, it happened so briefly, I doubt most people would even notice unless they actually stop it like I do. Just an interesting observation, nothing more. So Elmer realizes something screwy about this telescope, and I love the shot of him just bringing over Bugs with his gun. And Bugs says a line there, "You crazy." That's a reference to comedian Joe Besser. He might be more well known as one of the lesser known Third Stooges in the late 50s of the Three Stooges, but he was definitely a very popular comedian at the time.
There's something screwy around here.
Could be you, Doc. Oh, you and your old gun, you crazy.
But Luke Perkins mentioned that Tashlin does a lot of stylized or quote-unquote limited animation, and I do happen to agree that that term is a bit, I don't like using it myself, but anyway, if you look at the shot of Elmer just pushing Bugs forward, Bugs' body is just one cell. He just keeps that one cell, and it's just the head that's animated. It's kind of a weird effect, but hey, it definitely works. I mean, you're just focusing on what Bugs Bunny is doing here anyway. So up until this point, aside from the beginning, Tashlin hasn't been as quote-unquote cinematic as he usually does. And not that it matters, by the way. It's perfectly fine. But here he goes all cinematic, where Bugs turns around quickly and goes, "Only a rat would shoot someone in the back." And we see that wonderful shot of Elmer close up with those eyebrows. He looks very weird in that one shot. And again, Bugs Bunny points out, only a rat will shoot someone in the back. See a close-up of the trigger. And sure enough, Elmer actually shoots him in the back and says, "So I'm a big fat rat," breaking the fourth wall. I'm assuming that people in the audiences would have booed at the time. And we get a reference to comedian Jerry Colonna, where Bugs says, "Ah, have some cheese, rat." Beautiful. And if you don't know who Jerry Colonna is, he was a radio personality and comedian at the time. Lots of references to Jerry Colonna in Looney Tunes short, including literally 2 Jerry Colonna worm shorts that Bruce Filling directed around this time as well. Very popular. Definitely look him up.
Probably the scene that stood out to me the most when I was a kid, I couldn't stop laughing at this scene. It still makes me laugh to this day. And even my brother, who's not a Looney Tune fanatic, like he also enjoys the scene a lot whenever he sees this cartoon, is only a big fat rat will shoot a guy in the back. And I said, this is the one that stood out in my brain pretty much my entire life. But in particular, the punchline when Bugs, in his Jerry Colonna impression, "Ah, have some cheese, rat." And he shoves the huge piece of, I guess that's Swiss cheese, in Elmer's face. Just, kills me every time I watch it.
Only a rat would shoot a guy in the back. I reiterate, only a big fat rat would shoot a guy in the back.
So I'm a big fat wet.
Ah, have some cheese, rat.
I mean, I guess it's what I don't eat cheese. People, they've been bugging me about this ever since I was a kid. I eat mozzarella cheese. I like mozzarella sticks. I love pizza. I eat calzones. And I eat ricotta. Again, I eat a calzone. But pretty much every other cheese I don't like. It makes me nauseous. I hate the smell. I hate the taste. All that. And people have been bothering me about this my entire life. Still to this day, like I went out to eat a few days ago with some friends and I got a burger. Bison burger was actually really good. And I said, no cheese. It came back with cheese. And they're like, "Oh my God, you don't eat cheese?" Like, yeah, I just don't like cheese. I guess because I'm not a rat. No. But yeah, I don't like cheese. But that scene always makes me laugh.
So in a change of pace, we've had nothing but quick-fire gags after gags after gags. But here we focus on just one extended gag involving Elmer and that stick of dynamite, which once again I pointed out Elmer's a bit of a firearm, gun nut, whatever, because he just happens to have one in his pocket. So I guess he's just going back to basics in trying to get rid of Bugs, or maybe his gun's out of bullets, I don't know. But it ends up turning into a baseball game, so Elmer's just running away from the fact he doesn't want to get caught up in the explosion, but no, Bugs is treating it now as a baseball game, and Elmer, being Elmer, in other words, being incredibly stupid, thinks it's all a game. And then once he realizes that, you got that wonderful frame of Elmer's eyeballs just sticking out. Not quite like Tex Avery would have done, but it's still pretty weird, but very funny, of course. But unlike early in the short where Bugs is confident the entire time, Elmer actually throws the dynamite back at Bugs, and Bugs is like in a bit of a losing part for Bugs, which usually doesn't happen, but it actually mixes things up in this short.
Near the end of the cartoon, you hear frat. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, ba. Every sports scene in a Warner Brothers short, almost every sports scene has frat. That's by J.F. Barth. You hear that in the scene where they're running around, like figuring out, oh my goodness, we got dynamite. And it turns into a relay race at one point. And then Bugs dresses up as a baseball catcher. And Elmer thinks he's a pitcher. He thinks he's Dizzy Dean or Satchel Paige or... trying to think of pictures from the 1940s. Doing his wind-up and then realize, oh, crud, I got to get rid of this stick of dynamite or else.
Elmer, old kid, atta boy, we'll beat him. Come on, Elmer, come on, Eddie, old boy, Eddie, old stuffy there. Come on, Elmer, we'll beat him, atta boy.
If you want to know more about the song and the songwriter, please check out the commentary for A Long Flirtation Walk.
And it even looks like Bugs is now dead. R.I.P. Bugs. No, just kidding. This explosion makes this railroad, and it's such a great job that a train is running on it straight away. No welding, nothing. It's just a perfectly made railroad. And I like how when it's actually being built, it's timed really nice to the music too. But a train runs, and as you'd expect, Bugs is in the back of that train. But as Luke already pointed out, what we get next is a World War II reference where you shouldn't do any unnecessary traveling. Now, this short came out roughly as World War II was about to end, but it would have been in production much earlier, so of course World War II references will still slip in every so often. But I like the animation of Bugs jumping off the train and floundering around for a bit, which, again, other directors would have probably simplified that. But no, Bugs says, nope, don't do any unnecessary traveling, and we get that shot of him just walking off into the distance. What happens to Elmer? Is he going to get a raise over the fact that not only did he help with the engineering of this new railway, he actually had one built, indirectly of course? Who knows? But we end right there anyway.
So you hear another reprise of I've been working on the railroad when the dynamite explodes and the track starts laying down. And Bugs is on the train and he jumps off the train. And when he starts becoming a patriotic American and he says, we shouldn't be doing any unnecessary traveling because this cartoon was produced during World War II, you hear My Country 'Tis of Thee, also known as America.
I almost forgot. None of us civilians should be doing any unnecessary traveling these days.
Now, the melody of My Country 'Tis of Thee is unknown, but to Americans, like, we know My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty. It was actually the first song I ever sang in public 30 years ago. Thanks, Mr. Walker, for getting me started in my career. I have a recording of it, too. It's pretty funny. I have a mullet, and I'm singing this song, and I messed up part of it. I go from every mountain, and then I don't sing anything. I meant to say from every mountain. So it's adorable. I was 6. What do you want me to do? Now, for my buddies across the aisle in the United Kingdom, this is the British national anthem, where different words, and it's called God Save the King or God Save the Queen, depending on who the current monarch of the United Kingdom is. Currently, it is King Charles. So God Save the King. So same melody, but 2 different songs, whether you have it sung in the United States or sung by someone from Britain. And the last cue that we have in this cartoon is Kingdom Coming, also known as Jubilo, by Henry Clay Work. And this is the song. You hear it very briefly at the very end when Bugs jumps, after he dusts himself off and says, hey, don't do any unnecessary traveling. And he starts walking on the railroad tracks with his little hobo stick around his shoulder. Bum-ba-dum, bum-bum-bum, bum-bum, bum-ba-da-ba-dum, bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. And the short's over. That's when you hear that piece of music. So, those are my thoughts for The Unruly Hare. So great to revisit this short. So funny. Thank goodness it's finally restored. And maybe I'll come on the commentary for Hair Remover. And I will say that, I mean, obviously, I wish Frank Tashlin lasted in the animation longer, but just this cartoon's hilarious. He was great with Bugs. And I also really like the way that the Tashlin unit designed Bugs. You know, obviously for us that we know Warner Brothers history and we know how Bugs looked in the different units, how he looked different for Tashlin and for Clampett and for Jones and Avery and Freeling and the rest and McKimson. But I really like the particular design that he has in his unit with his teeth and all that. And Bob McKimson would take over Tashlin's unit, and some of those elements would cross over, and then eventually he was redesigned to be more, I guess, McKimson-ish. Couldn't find a better way to describe it. And just some of the animators and the animation in this cartoon, particular scenes, based off the top of my head, I think I could recognize some of the work that Cal Dalton did. But Tashlin in the 40s and just some of the faces that the characters make. I know, like, when Elmer looks at the screen and he does, like, a little blink and his eyes are really small. I don't know who animates that particular scene, but I've noticed that particular animation style in other Tashlin shorts. And I wish I was better at identifying them, but I love to see it. It's a shame that he didn't say longer. Oh, you crazy Jersey boy, Tashlin, you. I know I'm also from the same state, so we're all crazy. So thanks for listening. Thank you for indulging in me coming on this commentary. If you want to continue to learn more and catch up on my life as a musician and as a multifaceted geek and lover of Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, follow me on social media at the Toony Tenor. TheTooneyTenor for all that fun stuff. And who knows, maybe one day I will eat some cheese. No, I won't do that. I'll get sick and gross, and no, we don't want that to happen. Unless it's a good slice of pizza with only mozzarella. Once they start throwing pecorino and romano and this and that and provolone and fork cheese, no, just keep it simple. Mozzarella cheese. And also don't eat pizza from this area, from New York and New Jersey. If you eat pizza anywhere else in the world, it's going to stink. All right? I don't know why I started talking about... Well, I want pizza. I love pizza. I've been doing better in my diet. My birthday's next month, so maybe I'll eat pizza on my birthday. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. This rat has to go. Talk to you soon. Bye.
So yeah, this is one of the greatest Bugs Bunny shorts ever made. And it was puzzling as to why this was not included in that Bugs Bunny 80th collection, because you would have thought they would have included this just to have that one representation of a Frank Tashlin Bugs Bunny short. The only really good one out of the two that he did, one of which he sort of did, because it was finished by McKimson. In any case, this is one of those shorts I'm giving a perfect 10 out of 10. From start to finish, laugh after laugh after laugh, timing's perfect, animation incredibly weird, and yet it works so well, whether you freeze frame it or not. Even the musical puns, fantastic, folk performances, everything works exactly as it should. So this is one of those perfect 10 cartoons. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, take care.